So, picture this. It's the last day of the month, and you open your banking app the way you always do, and there it is. Your savings account. Maybe it says $18,000, maybe $32,000, whatever your number is. And unlike your investment account, unlike your budget, unlike basically every other number in your financial life, this one makes you feel good. Calm, even. Because that number is proof of something. It's proof that you're not like other people, that you don't blow your paycheck, that you did the thing every parent and every teacher and every financial rulebook told you to do. You saved. And here's where I have to say something that's probably going to feel almost offensive. That number, the one you're proudest of, the one that makes you feel safe when everything else feels uncertain, is very likely the most dangerous number in your entire financial life. Not your credit card debt, not your rent, I'm talking about your savings. And there's an exact, findable moment when that danger switched on, a moment that almost certainly already happened to you, quietly, without a single notification, and my goal today is to show you where it is. My name is Rick, and I spend an honestly embarrassing amount of time thinking about the gap between what feels safe with money and what actually is safe, because those two things, I've learned this the hard way, are almost never the same thing. And I want to be careful here, because I know how this sounds. Your savings are dangerous sounds like the kind of thing a guy says right before he tries to sell you a course. I'm not selling you anything. I'm going to show you the math, and the math is going to do something uncomfortable to the one financial habit you've probably never questioned in your life. So let's start where the discomfort starts. That $32,000. You think of it as money you kept. Money you protected. Every month it grows a little. Your bank even pays you some tiny amount of interest, maybe 0.5%, and the number ticks upward, and upward means good, right? Except here's the thing nobody shows you on that screen. Your savings account is pretty much the only place in your financial life where your money can grow and shrink at the same time. The number goes up while the value goes down. Inflation in a normal year runs somewhere around 3%, sometimes more, and your savings account pays you a fraction of that, which means that $32,000, sitting there looking a little bigger every month, is quietly buying less every month. And if you run it forward, it gets grim fast. At 3% inflation, money sitting in cash loses roughly a quarter of its purchasing power in 10 years. In 20 years, it loses almost half. You saved $32,000, and in terms of what it can actually do for you, 20 years from now you're holding something like $17,000. Nobody stole it. There was no crash, you didn't get scammed, there's no bad decision you can point to. The number on the screen never went down once, and the value bled out anyway. I want to give you a picture for this, and I'm going to keep coming back to it, so stay with me. Think of your finances as a ship. Cash savings are the ballast, the weight down in the hull that keeps a ship stable, that keeps it from tipping over when a wave hits. Every ship needs ballast. A ship with no ballast capsizes in the first storm. But here's what every sailor knows and almost no saver does. Ballast doesn't move the ship. Ballast has never moved a ship 1 meter in the entire history of sailing. And if you keep loading ballast, more and more of it, past the point of stability, the ship doesn't get safer. It just sits lower and lower in the water until it can't really go anywhere at all. And then eventually, it goes down. Now, if you've been around personal finance content for more than a week, you're probably thinking, okay, I see where this is going, this is the inflation lecture, I've heard it. And this is where I need to redirect you, because inflation is actually not the point of this video. Inflation is the slow leak. It's real, but it's not the danger. The danger is a crossing point. A specific, almost mathematical line where your savings stop being ballast and become anchor. Below that line, every dollar in your savings account is doing exactly what it should be doing, keeping you stable, protecting you from storms. Above that line, every additional dollar is doing the opposite of what you think it's doing. And most people cross that line without ever knowing it exists. For most households, by the way, that line sits somewhere around 6 months of living expenses. Hold that thought, because before I show you why the line sits there, I need to show you what happens to someone who ignores it for 30 years. Let me tell you about Walt. Walt is a fictional composite, but I promise you, you know a Walt. Everyone knows a Walt. Walt got his first real job at 26, and Walt was, by every conventional measure, the responsible one. While his co-worker Marcus was putting money into index funds, which Walt considered gambling, Walt saved cash. Every month, without fail, for 34 years, Walt moved money into his savings account and never touched it. By the time Walt retired at 60, he had accumulated $310,000 in cash. $310,000 of pure discipline. And Marcus? Marcus had actually saved less than half of what Walt did in real contributions, about $150,000 over the same stretch, partly because Marcus took more vacations and honestly had a better time along the way. But Marcus's money went into the market, averaging about 10% a year. And when they both retired, Walt had his $310,000, worth quite a bit less in real purchasing power than what he deposited over the years, and Marcus had a little over $1.4 million. Let that land for a second. Walt saved twice as much money and retired with less than a quarter of the wealth. And it wasn't because Marcus was smarter or luckier. Walt lost because his money never had a job. It just sat in the hull, as ballast, on a ship that was never going to sail anywhere. Now, I know what the counter-argument is here, because I used to make it myself. Sure, but at least Walt's money was safe. At least it was there. And this is where the story takes a turn that genuinely changed how I think about banks. Drawer with your name on it. The bank lends it out. It gets invested, loaned against mortgages, put to work in more or less exactly the kinds of assets Walt was too scared to touch himself. So Walt's $310,000 spent 34 years compounding beautifully. It just wasn't compounding for Walt. It was compounding for the bank, which paid Walt 0.5% for the privilege and kept the difference. Which means the whole framing of "I'm avoiding the market" is kind of an illusion. You're never really avoiding the market. Your money is in the market the moment you deposit it. The only question is which side of the compounding you're on. Walt thought he was refusing to play the game. He was playing the whole time, on the losing side, and calling it safety. Now here's the question I want you to sit with, because this is where the video stops being about math and starts being about you. If the numbers are this clear, and they are, why do people like Walt exist? Why are there millions of them? Why is there, statistically speaking, a pretty decent chance you're one of them right now? The answer took me a long time to accept, and it's this: oversaving is not really a financial behavior. It's an emotional one. Watching a cash balance grow gives you something the market never will, which is a number that only moves up. Every time you check it, you get this small hit of certainty, of control, of "I'm okay." And slowly, without ever noticing it happen, the savings stop being a tool and start being an identity. I'm a saver. I'm careful. I'm not like those people who gamble. And identities defend themselves. When you suggest to a lifelong saver that their cash pile might be hurting them, they don't hear financial advice, they hear an attack on who they are, which is exactly why the math never works on these people. Oversaving is fear wearing a responsible costume. And it's the best costume in all of personal finance, because everyone applauds it. Your parents applaud it. Your own instincts applaud it. And I can say all this with a straight face because I did it. This is the part one debated leaving out, honestly. For about 6 years, maybe closer to 7, roughly from my late 20s into my mid-30s, I held about $80,000 in cash. I told myself it was an emergency fund, even though it worked out to something like 20 months of expenses, which is not an emergency fund, that's a bunker. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment to invest it, that the market looked expensive, that I'd deploy it after the next dip. I was running spreadsheets at weird hours of the night, the same spreadsheets I always run, and I was ignoring what they were telling me, because the cash felt like the one part of my life that couldn't go wrong. And those 6 years turned out to be some of the strongest market years in a generation. When I finally sat down and calculated what that hesitation cost me, not just in those 6 years but projected forward to retirement age, the number came out somewhere over $600,000. I lost more than $500,000, and my account balance never dropped by a single dollar the entire time. That's the thing about this particular danger. It doesn't feel like losing. It feels like nothing. It's the most expensive nothing you will ever experience. Here's the reframe that finally broke the spell for me. A dollar sitting in savings isn't really a dollar. It's a seed you're eating instead of planting. $1 invested at 10% for 35 years becomes about $28. So every dollar of excess cash a 30-year-old is holding isn't costing them $1, it's costing them $28. $10,000 of unnecessary cash is roughly $250,000 of retirement that will simply never exist. So when you look at an oversized savings account, stop reading it in dollars. Read it in decades. You're not losing money by holding too much cash, you're losing time, and time is the one asset that no amount of future income can buy back for you. Okay. So at this point, if you're anything like the people I've walked through this with in person, you're feeling a very specific urge. The urge to open your banking app tonight and move everything, all of it, into the market. Empty the ballast. Set sail. Please don't do that. And I realize this is the turn nobody sees coming, because everything I've said for the last 15 minutes has been pointing in one direction, and now I'm going to point the other way. Zero savings is more dangerous than too much savings. Remember the ship. A ship overloaded with ballast can't move, sure, but a ship with no ballast flips over in the first storm it meets. If you invest every last dollar and then life does what life does, you lose the job, or the transmission goes, or somebody needs a root canal, you'll be forced to sell investments just to survive the month. And here's the cruel joke of markets. Emergencies cluster around downturns. Layoffs happen in recessions, and recessions happen when markets are down. So the person with no cash ends up selling at the exact bottom, locking in losses, breaking the compounding chain at the worst possible moment, and that chain, if you've watched this channel before, you know, the chain is the whole game. So the danger isn't on one side of the line. It's on both sides. Which means the exact moment your savings become dangerous isn't a direction. It's a boundary. And now we can finally define it. Here it is. The exact moment your savings become dangerous is the moment $1 in your account no longer has a job. That's it. That's the whole line. Every dollar of your cash should be able to answer one question. What are you for? I'm 3 weeks of groceries if the paycheck stops. That's a job. I'm the house down payment for next spring. That's a job. I'm the buffer that lets us sleep at night when the car starts making that noise. Also a job. For most households, all the legitimate jobs get filled somewhere around 6 months of living expenses, plus whatever real purchase is coming inside the next couple of years. Dollar number 1 through dollar number, let's say, 30,000, those dollars are ballast. They're supposed to be there. But the first dollar past the last job, $30,001, that dollar is unemployed. And unemployed money doesn't rest, it decays. That's the exact moment. It's not a market event, it's not some age you hit or salary you reach. It's the quiet instant your savings crossed over from fully employed to partially idle. And for most people watching this, that moment is already years in the past, and nobody sent a notification. And once you see it, I'm warning you, you're going to start seeing it everywhere, because money is just the most measurable version of this. The skill you're saving until you feel ready. The business idea you're protecting by never actually starting it. The difficult conversation you keep holding on to for the right moment. They all follow the same math. Idle assets don't hold their value, they decay, quietly, while feeling perfectly safe, because nothing visibly goes down. A skill you don't use erodes. An idea you don't test eventually gets built by someone else. The right moment you're waiting for is getting repriced every single day you wait for it. Hoarding feels like protection in every area of life, and in every area of life, past the point of stability, it turns into the same anchor. So let's land this thing, because I don't want this to just be an interesting 20 minutes that changes nothing about your Tuesday. 3 moves. First, tonight, give every dollar in your savings a job description. Literally list them out. Emergency months, named purchases, the sleep at night buffer, whatever your real jobs are. Second, find your line, 6 months of true expenses plus anything you're genuinely buying within 2 years, and cap your cash there. Not approximately there. There. And third, everything above the line gets automated out, monthly, into broad, boring, diversified investments, the kind Walt was afraid of and Marcus retired on. And automate it specifically so that your fear never gets a vote again. Because your fear, as we've established by now, has terrible judgment and a really great costume. And here's the last turn, the one I actually want you to take with you. Go back to that moment from the beginning. The app, the balance, that little glow of pride. The most dangerous thing your savings account ever did to you was not the value it lost to inflation, and it wasn't even the compounding you missed out on. It was the feeling. That number made you feel finished. It let you believe the financial part of your life was handled, and so you never learned what your money could actually do, and the safest feeling account you own quietly became the most expensive decision you never knew you were making. The safety was the risk the whole time. So open the app tonight. Same screen, same number, but now you know what you're actually looking at. Ballast, up to the line. Anchor, past it. Give every dollar a job, keep the ship stable, and then finally, let the thing sail. Now, if you found this video informative, make sure to press that like button, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel. Now, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.